Chatbots are no longer a communication differentiator for institutions. I think they're table stakes. And that means they need to be a feature inside of a larger AI-driven student engagement system, not a standalone product that an institution is buying.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday I'll break down what actually matters, fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, Mallory here. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. If you've been listening for a while, you are going to notice something a little different today. For 55 episodes, you've tuned in to hear Seth Odell and me chat about the biggest issues and trends in higher ed. But as we announced last week, Higher Ed Pulse is evolving. AI is moving so quickly, and frankly, no one has time to keep up with every headline. So Enrollify is making this podcast more focused, and every Monday, I'll be here to help guide you and break down the most important AI developments shaping student recruitment, engagement, and success. So I'm no AI expert, but I'm certainly an enthusiast, an avid user, and I have access to some of the very best minds in this industry. So I'll be your guide, bringing in top news headlines, industry experts, and key trends, all to help you make sense of the hype and look great in front of your boss. Who doesn't want to do that? So let's do it. I think hands down, the biggest news in artificial intelligence in our industry last week was the announced merger of Gravity, Ivy.ai, and Ocelot. And if you're not familiar with these companies, Gravity is an AI-powered alumni engagement and fundraising platform, and Ivy and Ocelot are AI-based communication tools. And so why is this merger a big deal? Well, here's my take, y'all. Chatbots have been one of the most overhyped edtech products of the last decade. When Ivy and Ocelot first launched, having an AI-powered chatbot was novel. Schools saw them as this cutting-edge way to support their students and reduce call center volume. I'm sure companies selling more SMS-based products started to get a little nervous, but let's be real, and we've all had these experiences. Early gen chatbots in a pre-OpenAI world were not reliable, and they required an unrealistic amount of human investment. But fast forward to today, March 2025, chatbots are no longer a communication differentiator for institutions. I think they're table stakes. And that means they need to be a feature inside of a larger AI-driven student engagement system, not a standalone product that an institution is buying. So, in my opinion, that's exactly why this merger happened. These tools were not enough on their own. And by joining, Ivy and Ocelot are trying to move from being just chatbots to being part of a broader engagement strategy with Gravity that follows students from enrollment through alumni giving. Friends, to break this down further, I am bringing in someone who knows edtech, enrollment, and marketing inside and out. My dear friend Gil Rogers is a well-known voice in the higher ed space with years of experience in student engagement. He's seen firsthand how AI is reshaping the industry, and I cannot think of a better person to dig into this news with. Gil, welcome to Higher Ed Pulse. Let's start with this. What was your first reaction when you heard about this merger?
Mallory, thank you for having me on. I think I'm actually going to read you the text message that I replied back to the person who sent me the press release article. And my immediate response was, that's a lot of vowels, or sometimes vowels, right? So that was my knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
I have been known over the past couple of years to make a lot of jokes about alphabet soup companies in higher ed. And so to see that many vowels and sometimes vowels in a press release article was funny to me. Now, but in all sincerity, I think that, you hit the nail on the head when you said that, the leadership of these companies recognize that there's a difference between being a feature and being being a company, right? And so when you look at the landscape here, the reality is that institutions have limited bandwidth to be thinking about the different tools that they're monitoring and tracking and using. They have even more limited budget for what they're going to be spending their resources on. And so consolidation happens. That's what happens in every industry that ever has existed. And this is what we're heading into is happened to consulting firms a number of years ago, right? And now that we've got technology and we've got AI, it's the same thing. I think there's going to be some benefits here to customers. There's going to be some downside because, every time this type of thing happens, it also removes choice from the marketplace. But to your point, I think for many of the institutions that are using these types of platforms, there's a redundancy in these tools with maybe what's going to be in their CRM or their what is in their CRM. And how do you justify having all of these different redundant platforms in your tech stack?
You just nailed it on the head. I think next gen CRMs have very powerful AI built into them, right? Like Element 451 is an AI powered first student engagement platform. There is essentially a chatbot built within that product. And I was on LinkedIn and I saw Sam Holding, he's the head of demand gen over at Bibliu. He posted that he looked at the customer base of Ocelot and Ivy and noticed that 97% of their customers are using older or more general CRMs like Slate that do not probably have the same level of AI capabilities that like an Element 451 does. And he wrote that he suspects that a lot of those customers are going to roll off if they're already using a next gen CRM, or that when their contracts expire, that they will likely roll off into a next gen CRM. It just makes sense, he wrote, from a cost and simplification of the tool stack perspective. And it sounds like, to me, Gil, you agree with him.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. That's a good instinct there. And I think one of the things that you think about, and you and I worked together years ago now at this point, I was less gray, if that's believable. I mean, I can't be any more gray.
You weren't, I promise. No.
I can't be any more gray than I already am, right? So, but the COVID time caused a lot more of the grayness, and we lived through this with video, right? Video engagement being a standalone thing versus a part of a process. We lived through this with social media before that being its own separate thing versus integrated into your overall process. And chatbots are one of those things that was, like, as you said at the open, right? It was a nice flashy tool. I worked at a company that lived off of a chatbot functionality, right? And so in a lot of ways, what's happening here is the company's trying to grow by consolidation, right? You bring the number of clients across those institutions together. Now you've got ideally, if in a perfect world, I don't work with these companies, I don't know their exact numbers, but let's say they're all equal size, and I'm just going to use round numbers. They all have 100 clients. Now they have 300 clients, right? There's going to be some overlap because of the redundancy of these tools. I'm sure there are institutions that use Gravity for one thing and Ocelot for another, and now that's going to take off one of that total, right? So, but from a market share perspective, maybe there's some downstream opportunity if you roll these companies up. Now you've got a single unified force, the valuation of that company. Now we're getting into the business elements of all of these things. But I think that the general end user out there is just going to see an opportunity to they're going to either sink or swim now, right? Like, you've got all these things together. You're either going to innovate or die. And I think you're absolutely right that we're looking at if an institution is in a place where they have to make choices of how they spend their time, resources, and effort. And sometimes, and we learned this being at a company that focused on video, sometimes being good enough is better than being the Cadillac, right? And if it's built into the system and good enough, that's better. And ideally, that's the best solution. You can build the best standalone feature and function and tool if it's a feature, not a company. And I think that's what this is leading us down, as a path where there's an opportunity for this to be a company by integrating these things together, and we'll see how it turns out.
Look, in 5 years, what if a student can just ask ChatGPT 8.0 about financial aid and get a better answer than their school's AI chatbot? Like, does this merger even matter when that world exists?
It'll be interesting to see, right? Because I think that there's a lot of ramifications in that exact type of way, right? I had the same when ChatGPT first started like making its waves, right? I said, what is this going to do to the college search, right? Like why should I go to college search and compare websites and give my personal information to be able to evaluate schools when I can just say, what's the difference between University of Delaware and University of California, and get that information delivered to me without having to get then the spam emails and the junk mail and those sorts of things. Why go to the school directly if I can go to a place that's going to give me the all the information that I need without having to get bombarded with engagement and outreach, right? And so I think, obviously we're in a world where there's trade-offs, because if I go back to my core as an admissions counselor, right, the job of an admissions counselor is they want to build a relationship, right? They want to make engagement. But we throw that to the window, or throw that out the window rather, when we automate everything. And so I think that there's a certain level of balance here where institutions need to decide what they want to do and what they want to be. And that's a bigger picture conversation than a 3-company roll-up.
I think if I'm a leader on a higher ed campus right now, one of my biggest headaches is the system fragmentation of all of my technology across units. And there's so many tools and there's not enough integration. And so I understand, from that perspective, why this could sound at first glance really attractive. But as we've been saying, like, without the right CRM, this just kind of creates another disconnected platform and another headache around having to fit everything into the existing tech stack. So if you had to guess what's next, what's your hot take?
That's a great question, because you and I both know what's next is always something, right? There's these types of things never just happen once and then we have nothing for another couple of years, right? I feel like this is going to be the first of a few. It's not going to be dozens, but it's going to be the first of a few announcements like this in the space, especially in the ed tech space, where there's going to be some consolidation. I think it has to do with cash flow of companies. It has to do with everything we've talked about just synergy with features and synergy with the tech stack, or lack of synergy with the tech stack. I think there's going to be more. I think it's going to be interesting to watch which players are in which phase, and we're at that cream rises to the top phase when it comes to some of this innovation.
It's an interesting, potentially risky middle ground, operating without a full CRM as part of this merger. And we know schools want fewer vendors, not more. And AI-powered engagement tools are kind of quickly taking over these solutions. So yes, I think, it will be interesting to see what's coming next. And one thing is certainly clear: AI is no longer an add-on. It's going to be driving the biggest shifts that we will see in higher ed tech. And this is definitely not going to be the last major announcement or merger that happens, maybe even this month. Certainly not this year. Friends, if you've got thoughts on this, let's keep the conversation going. Find me on LinkedIn or just drop a comment wherever you are listening. I want to hear what you think. And don't forget, every Monday, I'll be here breaking down the biggest AI news shaping higher ed. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe and stay ahead of the curve. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next Monday on Higher Ed Pulse. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.